Ukraine is building its own Patriot problem solver. There's a Ukrainian defense company making a claim that most Western procurement officials would laugh out of a meeting. They said they can test, in a single day, what European bureaucracy needs months to approve, and they're using that speed to build something Europe has desperately needed and hasn't been able to produce fast enough: a ballistic missile interceptor. That's not the Patriot. Not a prototype on a drawing board, a missile that just completed a fully controlled maneuvering flight, taking a live guidance correction mid-air and executing it. Now, that's the one maneuver that separates an interceptor from a very expensive firework. For 3 years, Ukraine watched its cities absorb Iskander strikes while the Patriot queue stayed short and the wait stayed long. Europe wanted to help, but Europe moves at the speed of committees. And sometime in the last 12 months, a 4-year-old Ukrainian company founded by engineers, architects, and game designers made a quiet decision: stop waiting, build it ourselves, and then sell it to the continent that couldn't build it fast enough.
You, Jobu. I do it myself.
That's the story most of the coverage missed entirely. Hey friends, Wes here, multi-branch veteran, bad Russian speaker because mudro izuchat protivnika, and apparently still accessible enough that some of you were shocked that I replied to your emails last week. Look, I'm not a celebrity. I still mow my own grass. If you take the time to write me a question through email, I'll write you back. Unless you're one of the 1% that slips through the cracks. I get a lot of emails, like everybody else. So today we're covering Firepoint, their Freyja interceptor system, and why a Ukrainian startup may be drafting the architecture of Europe's missile defense for the next 20 years. Here's the contrast worth holding before we get into the hardware. The assumption underlying European defense procurement for 3 decades was simple: advanced nations build the exquisite systems, smaller nations buy them and wait in line. Ukraine was supposed to be the customer. Europe was supposed to be the supplier. Russia's full-scale invasion didn't just challenge that assumption, it inverted it. The country getting hit every night by ballistic missiles has now become the prime contractor on a pan-European interceptor architecture, with a German industrial giant signing on as its sensor supplier. Ukraine isn't asking for the shield anymore. It's drawing the blueprint. That's the inversion this video is about. And let me set the table, because the threat is brutal and specific. The single hardest problem in Ukraine's sky isn't the drone, it isn't the cruise missile, it's the ballistic missile. The Iskander and the Hensoldt that come screaming down out of the upper atmosphere at thousands of meters per second, giving a defender maybe 2 minutes of warning on a good day. The only thing in Ukraine's inventory that reliably stops those is the American Patriot. And Patriots are few, expensive, and spread desperately thin across too many cities. Every Russian ballistic salvo is a math problem Ukraine keeps losing. Not enough interceptors, too many potential targets, a defender constantly choosing what gets protected and what gets to burn. Fortunately, Ukraine is now making Russia deal with this math, and I hope they said, "Welcome to the party, pal."
Welcome to the party, pal!
By forcing Russia to defend Moscow and other refinery sites with Russia's limited interceptors. That's another video. But the answer to Ukraine's math problem couldn't come from outside fast enough, so Ukraine decided to solve it from inside. A company that you've heard of before called Firepoint. Yeah, if that name rings a bell, it should. They're the outfit behind the Flamingo long-range cruise missile and the FP-1 attack drone. Now, Firepoint was founded in 2022 after the full-scale invasion by a crew that reportedly included engineers, architects, and game designers working out of improvised workshops. 4 years later, they're Ukraine's largest drone maker, and they're attempting something most established defense firms treat as a decades-long program: a homegrown ballistic missile interceptor. The system is called Freyja. The interceptor, at its heart, is the FP-7X. So what makes intercepting a ballistic missile so much harder than hitting a ground target? Well, this is the whole technical ballgame. When you fire a missile at a building, the building stays where you left it. Intercepting a ballistic missile means hitting a target falling from the upper atmosphere at up to 2 kilometers per second, on a trajectory that's changing, while your interceptor receives targeting data mid-flight and adjusts its own path to arrive in exactly the right cubic meter of sky at exactly the right fraction of a second. It's less like shooting a clay pigeon and more like throwing one bullet to intercept another bullet in the dark while both are moving. The clever part of FP-7X is its lineage. The design traces back to a Soviet interceptor from the S-300 family, originally built to down incoming threats. Ukraine inherited that engineering DNA. Firepoint is reportedly rebuilding it in modern composite materials to make it lighter, cheaper, and producible at scale. Just last week, they ran a test where the missile performed a fully controlled maneuvering flight, taking an aggressive guidance command from the control center mid-flight and responding. That maneuver is the single skill that separates a real interceptor from hardware that can only fly straight. And here's where the honest complexity lives, because the headline says one thing and the fine print says something more interesting. The missile is not an air defense system. To intercept a ballistic missile, you need three things working as one: a radar good enough to spot and track the threat at range, a command and control brain that does the geometry and tells the interceptor where to go, and a seeker in the missile's nose that locks on for the terminal phase. As of right now, Firepoint has the missile. The seeker, data uplink, and command and control are still being sourced from European partners. They built the arrow. The bow is coming together from across the continent. And the most important piece just clicked into place. At the Eurosatori Defense Show in Paris, Firepoint signed a partnership with German sensor firm Hensoldt to build Freya around Hensoldt's Trimmel 4D radar. This is a genuinely smart pairing. The Trimmel 4D is a modern, electronically scanned radar capable of tracking around 1,500 targets simultaneously out to roughly 250 kilometers. Better still, it's already in Ukraine, already running the Iris-T air defense batteries that Ukrainian crews operate every single night. So this isn't paper hardware, it's combat-proven equipment in Ukraine that Ukrainian operators already know, getting paired with a Ukrainian interceptor. Now, the CEO of Firepoint said recently that they had the concept, they were missing the radar, and now they have it. So let me tell you why that radar partnership matters structurally, not just technically. A lot of you know that I worked on that E3 Sentry AWACS system, and at its core, it's essentially a flying radar built to do exactly one thing: see the threat and hand that picture to whoever can act on it. The entire discipline of air defense is a relay race. Detect, track, decide, engage. No single piece wins alone. A brilliant interceptor with a blind radar is useless. A perfect radar with no interceptor is an expensive way to watch yourself get hit. What Firepoint is doing is assembling that relay team from whatever runs fastest, sourcing each leg from the best available partner. Missile from Ukraine, radar from Germany, seekers and command nodes under evaluation from firms across Europe. It's a coalition air defense system built by a coalition at war. And the logic is exactly right, because the relay race only works when every handoff is clean. And right now, that baton is moving. So here's where I want to be precise about what we know and what we don't, because the gap between those two things is actually the most interesting part of the story. The maneuvering flight test was real, and it was a genuine milestone. It's not a combat intercept against a live Iskander executing terminal evasive maneuvers of its own. Those are very different problems, and the distance between them is where most interceptor programs spend their hardest years. The year-end production target is Firepoint's stated goal. Defense timelines have a well-documented relationship with optimism that doesn't always survive contact with integration complexity. The seeker and the command and control partners haven't been named yet. Integration is exactly where these programs bleed time. And here's the thing about those missing pieces: each one that gets locked in is another leg of the relay race clicking into place. And the moment the full system comes together, Europe has a scalable ballistic missile interceptor designed by people who've been living the threat every single night. That's not a theoretical capability. That is a system debugged under the harshest possible operational conditions at a price point that established nations couldn't match if they tried. Hensoldt's own chief called the goal combining Ukraine's speed with proven sensor technology. The Germans are not signing partnership agreements at major defense shows with companies they think are selling vaporware, which tells you this is real. And here's the doctrine shift underneath all of this, because it's bigger than one interceptor program. For decades, the model was fixed. A handful of advanced nations built the exquisite, expensive air defense systems. Everyone else bought them, waited in line, and accepted that the supply chain moved at a pace set by peacetime procurement culture. Ukraine just broke that model at both ends. A 4-year-old company born in improvised workshops is now the prime contractor on a continental missile defense architecture. The country that was supposed to receive the shield is designing it. The country that was supposed to be the customer is drawing the blueprint and inviting Europe industrial giants to bid for subsystem slots. Firepoint said the quiet part out loud. They can test in a day what European bureaucracy needs months to approve. That asymmetry is not a boast, it's a product specification, and it's exactly why Hensoldt signed. Germany brings industrial scale and sensor pedigree. Ukraine brings urgency. It's a live testing range called the Russian Air Force, and the feedback loop is measured in hours rather than quarters. Neither could build this alone at the speed the threat demands. Together, they might build something Europe needs for the next generation. We all thought Ukraine was exporting drones. They are actually exporting the next European version of Patriot so that Europe doesn't have to rely on the United States. Ukraine is still assembling the full system. The missile is the one that's furthest along. The radar partner is now confirmed. The seeker and command and control are still in negotiation. Until all of those pieces integrate and the full system intercepts a live ballistic target under realistic conditions, Freya is a very promising program, not a fielded capability. Russia isn't going to pause its Iskander campaign while the integration work finishes. But the year-end target is real pressure. Russia spent this war trying to prove Ukraine couldn't defend its own sky. It spent billions on ballistic missiles designed to overwhelm a defense that couldn't scale fast enough. Well, the answer taking shape isn't a thank you note to Washington for more Patriots. It's a Ukrainian interceptor, a German radar, and a pan-European shield with Kyiv's name on the design authority. Russia wanted to make Ukraine dependent. Instead, it may have produced something more dangerous than a well-armed enemy, a brilliant, fast-moving defense industry with nothing to lose and a continent full of customers watching. The missile that defends Berlin someday might be designed by people who learned the trade defending Kharkiv. That is not the war Vladimir Putin thought he was starting. Okay, that's it for today, my friends. Hit subscribe if you're feeling froggy. That's the best free thing you can do to support what I do here. QR code at the screen goes to my Substack or just wesodonnell.com. That's where the long-form analysis lives. And if you want to support directly, memberships start about $3 a month here on YouTube or $8 a month over on Substack because you get a lot more stuff over on Substack. And as always, glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. Crimea is Ukraine.